Hello, it's May 2025, early May, and I just want to make a video about the AR process, which is the administrative remedy process. In the DC jail, they had the grievance process. As a federal inmate, we had the AR process, the administrative remedy process, and I just want to review it so you guys know what's going on with it, because it sounds good on paper. It sounds like if an inmate has a problem, they have some place they can go to remedy it, but they can't. And the documents I'm going to go over today are from my own prison experience of being incarcerated for over a year after being convicted of charges having to do with being at the Capitol on January 6th. These documents I'm going to review are ones that I saved, compiled, and brought out of prison. In prison, this is one of my files that I made and kept in my locker. So this is just a document folder from commissary, and I just made my own file cabinet to sort my papers, and so that's what I'm taking this out of. This is my own work, my own compilation, and to be completely honest, I don't even feel like reviewing it today. I'm only doing this out of duty to God and country. I think my country needs to know what's going on in the prison system, and we should be asking questions like, where's our money going to, and are Americans really being abused in prison? Because I'm here to tell you that they are. And honestly, like, I don't feel like doing this, but I have to, because I feel like God didn't put me through a year of hell to have me document it and then not share it with you. Just like many other January 6ers, my life's still in complete turmoil right now. Part of my kids still aren't living with me. I'm getting ready to move for the third time since being let out on a presidential pardon in January. And it's only May, the very beginning of May. And I either feel nothing or I feel overwhelmed and just torn apart today. So anyhow, let's get on with this. So the first couple papers I have here are papers that I printed out from the computers that we had available in the legal library at the SFF Hazleton in West Virginia. When I was in the DC jail, at the very end, they wouldn't even let us access the law library. They had us shut off from it. At least at Hazleton, I had access to it, where I would go there at least once a week and just read policy for fun. Here, this part of the printed out law library, the policy, says that the purpose of the administrative remedy program is to allow an inmate to seek formal review of an issue relating to any aspect of his or her own confinement. An inmate may not submit a request or appeal on behalf of another inmate, which they can't help an inmate write their request or appeal. They just can't turn the paper in for them. But anyways, so this is just saying that we have a process. It sounds good on paper, right? Prisoners have a process. I'm here to tell you that they're interfering with it, and there is no process. The program objectives say that this is available to inmates and that each request, including appeals, will be responded to within the time frames allowed. The BOP has found ways to go around these kind of rules and policies. It's not just on the prison level that our AR process is being thwarted, but it's at the higher level at Central, and at the higher level than that, regional. They continually ask for more time. They lose our documents, and I'm going to go over that and show you evidence of it. They interfere. They refuse to provide forms to inmates. So here we go. Okay, so in October, I filed a BP form, which is one of the forms in the AR process. It's past the informal resolution, because you're supposed to go speak to somebody first or fill out a BP-8 form first to get an informal resolution done, hopefully work it out before you go to a higher form. I always followed the process, and I did that here, but once I got past that, I filed another BP form, and my complaint was, here's a copy of the form that's attached to a paper I typed out about my issues and attached to my informal resolution. But my complaint was that the AR, administrative remedy process, is continually thwarted, and my relief request was to stop interfering with the AR process. And I wrote on it, see attached. Attached to that form is something I typed out at the law library. And I'm going to read this to you so you can hear how I documented the many times that the AR process was interfered with. And I just want you to know that they did nothing to fix this issue. So it says, refusals and unresponded to forms. It is common for BP-8 forms to be unresponded to. Program Statement 1330.18.2 states each request will be responded to within the proper time frame. Here are some of my BP-8 forms that have been ignored, and I mean completely ignored, like they didn't answer them at all. 101112 from 3/10 of 2024. 141516 from July 21st, 2024. Everything, all the forms end up having a number when they put them in the system, and I recorded all my form numbers. Form 171819 from May 17th, 2024. 2025 from January 16th, 2024. 131415 from March 4th, 2024. All those forms completely ignored. There was other ones that were completely ignored too that I just didn't list. And then I go on in another paragraph. I have helped inmates fill out BP-8 forms, which is allowed by 1330.1810A, and every single one about visiting was stacked on Counselor Bennett's desk and then lost. When I turned a BP-8 in for being unjustly and abusively locked into my cell, he did not enter the form. A few days later, he adamantly refused to take an 8 on it, saying the incident is over. I emailed the administrator on 9/11/2024 and then spoke to her in person, was assured he would accept my forms, but the counselor still refused. Then I go on about unnecessarily denied forms. Forms have been denied because the 8 and 9 were not matching, even though the meaning of the sentences were contextually the same. An example of this happening to me personally are forms 1208931-F1 and 171819 about unnecessarily scheduling visitors. Misstated forms. Another reason forms are denied and interfered with is by the prison misstating forms, thereby cutting into or cutting off my response time. So these forms that I'm going to list is when I turn in a form, you have X amount of days that they have to respond to you, and then X amount of days that you have to respond back to that. These forms that I'm going to list were literally purposely misstated, so I had no time to respond back, therefore cutting me off, making me restart the process, or them not giving me my forms back until after the date had passed for me to be able to respond back, things like that. And this is one of the tricks that they do to keep you from moving up in the AR process. Okay, so some form numbers. Well, I don't even know if I should read these all, because right here is a whole list of the form numbers, the dates, and the dates that they were given to me, all interfered with. Refusal to provide forms. I've been denied the ability to take forms because I have to wait for an 8 to be responded to, something that may not happen, or because the counselor wants me to restart the process after the last BP8 for the same issue was never responded to. So what they were doing is I turn in an 8, which is an informal resolution, and they never respond to it, and they drag it out and they take so long, then I'm like, okay, well, I should be able to go to a 9 now because they're not responding to the 8. And they say, no, you have to turn in another 8. And they make me just keep turning in 8s, but they never respond to them. And then they refuse to let me go up to a 9. So the issues are often continual problems and therefore unable to time out. Program Statement 1330.188B requires staff to provide the form even if the inmate refuses to present an informal request. 1330.188C says I can obtain forms from my correctional officer. But they're not giving me forms when I ask them to, completely denying them. So this BP form was never dealt with, even though I proved all these forms were interfered with. So now I'm going to go over some of these other forms I turned in to show the AR interference and how they don't let prisoners receive help even when they're really abused. So here I turned in an 8 that says I do not have access to my counselor. My relief requested was please make Bennett use his office instead of hiding in the crossover, and please have open houses. So what was happening is inmates are supposed to have access to their counselors, to the members of the unit team, and we didn't have access to these people. And the counselor is the main person that gives you forms and takes your 8s and takes your 9s. There's also a unit team manager, and they can help you, but normally they don't. Normally these things go through the counselor. And so my counselor, Bennett, he would get irritable and angry with inmates, and he just wouldn't be around for not just a day at a time, but literally for weeks at a time. And we were left with no help. And so this form was filled out at one of the times that he was just avoiding inmates, and I tried to talk to him about it when I could once in a while find him, get a hold of him. Usually when, like, he called me back into the crossover one time to give me a form that he had to give back to me. And I was like, are you going to have open houses? You know, how can I get a hold of you? How can I get forms? And he literally laughed at me. And so I turned in forms, just give me a counselor that I can work with. And they never did anything about this. Even though I went up past the informal resolution to other BP forms explaining the issue. And this describes on the copy is a poor copy of my form because our copy machine didn't work in the law library for like a quarter of the year last year. But at least I have somewhat of a copy, so it just makes it difficult to read. But I asked for access in multiple weeks in September because we didn't know where he was. He referring to the counselor. On 9/13/24, I was summoned to the crossover where I cannot go unless beckoned because he had not been using his office. And I said, are you going to be using your office soon? We need you. He did not care and appear amused, refused to say if he would be there during open houses, and said to me, catch me in the unit, but wouldn't say when, making it an impossibility for a programming inmate, a busy inmate like myself, to get a hold of him. I left frustrated. On 9/24/24, surprisingly, he's in his office and he refused to help. I am not here for your every whim. And he refused to tell me when his open house was. They are posted, he said. I searched each corkboard. Nothing was posted. Finally, they are posted in the Sally Port, he said. And I found the open house hours partially covered up with other papers. You know, why can't he just tell me when his open house is? Why is he playing games with me? Why was he so unprofessional? In policy, in the national policy, which every institution that has federal inmates is supposed to follow, 5321.081B says that the correctional counselor will be accessible to their assigned unit daily during their scheduled hours of work. This could include touring the unit, holding open houses, and other ways to encourage staff and inmate interaction. In 5300.21 6.2c, it says they're to have daily contact with inmates assigned to their units. Clearly, that wasn't happening. There was no help for us. Here's multiple responses to a response saying that it's not a sensitive issue when I'm trying to get help with dealing with an officer that was abusive. They're telling me go to the prison warden level to get help with dealing with the officers, but multiple times that I did that, they refused to help or literally didn't file the forms. And here's one of their responses asking for additional time that they need to respond to my form. So that's something else they would do, is just say, hey, we need more time to respond to this. We need more time to respond to this. And so months would go by that you're trying to get help with one issue and you can't get help because they just ask for more time. Same thing again. Here's another thing. One of their responses was, you did not submit the proper number of continuation pages with your request or appeal. And this was not true. I always either attach the proper number of continuation page, which would be 4, or I mean, I just did, but the prison is known for taking off part of your papers, and regional saying that your exhibit forms are continuation papers or vice versa. I don't know if they're just not reading the forms or what, but they're literally kicking them back when they shouldn't, just for reasons they shouldn't. They need additional time for this one, which was just me trying to get enough time to eat food in the kitchen. Well, eat food in the chow hall. Here are emails that I printed out to administration asking them for help. I'm having issues with the AR process. I spoke with one of you weeks ago about our BP8s not being answered and was assured the unit team would be spoken to about it. Now I'm told that the mailroom BP8 will not be signed off on, so I can go to a BP9, even though there's no scale, outdated postage charts. I haven't gotten my newspaper, and God only knows what other mail for weeks. Also, my last BP9 was refused because the relief did not match my 8. The wording is different, but it says the same thing. I will show you my 9. This is getting ridiculous. So this is me asking administration for help in an electronic email, and they don't respond to it. They do nothing to help you. That one was to Bowler and Brewer. We're talking about wardens and assistant wardens. Here's one to my counselor, an email to my counselor. Hi, Officer Bennett. I was wondering if you'll be in your office or if this week will be like last week where our counselor is purposely unavailable to us. I really need paper and envelopes. We need to discuss a BP9 that I was given back for being untimely. When looking at the dates on the rejected forms, they were clearly held and not turned in by someone working at the prison. The BP8 was not answered for weeks and weeks before I had to get it signed off on. An inmate should never have to force an 8 to be dealt with. That's AR interference. And then the BP9 was held and not turned in on time by a staff member. Again, interference. I would like to discuss this form with you and decide what to do. If nobody is going to fix it, I need to turn in a BP8 for AR interference. I need to see you put it in the system so I know it isn't thrown out like my last BP8 was. Thank you in advance. And I know that this sounds, I don't know if cold is the right word, but this email was sent 9/22/24. So here's me for 3/4 of a year now, continually trying to get help. And they're literally laughing at me, refusing to give me forms, refusing to input forms, making up excuses for rejecting forms. It's very frustrating being an inmate trying to get help. But anyways, that's the AR process for you. And I know it can be a little confusing when I'm reading like BP8s, BP9s, and BP10s, and using the terminology of our prison lingo for the AR process. But I hope you get the point that there is no help for prisoners in there, and they will jump through hoops to refuse to help you. And I could go on and on about this. I could, and probably in other videos, I probably will pull out forms about officers that were abusive in the situations where they scream or yell and act like an abusive fool. And then when I turn in paperwork about those officers, how they're literally kicked back. I mean, an officer can do whatever they want to an inmate at Hazleton in West Virginia and get away with it because they protect each other. inmates are literally abused sexually and physically and mentally, and nobody is helping them. But we'll get into some of those stories and the things that were documented at another time. For now, this video and probably the next several videos will just be me going over different sections of my file, different forms. I have some information on my custody classification coming up, meaning what they use to hold me in a higher security prison than they should have, even though I had no criminal history. I'll have some information to share about the Dublin women, which the Dublin prison was closed down in California for things like a rape club and terrible housing conditions. But when those Dublin women got to Hazleton, they said Dublin was a hotel compared to Hazleton, and yet Hazleton's still open and nobody's investigating it. There'll be things about the law library not being in order and them refusing to let us access printers coming up. I've got a section about food and meal times, how we're not given the proper food or the proper time to be allowed to eat. FSA interference that they're not giving us. I've got a lot of stories documented from different inmate situations that I wrote and then typed up, and things I helped them with. And I'd like to go over those with you guys. I mean, literally stories where like one woman was taken down by a dozen officers, and then she was chained up in the shoe and her pants pulled down and searched by male officers, and women stuck in cells with biological men who sexually abuse them. I've got a lot to go over. Women with severe medical problems that were left untreated. So yeah, lots and lots to go over. And I just hope I'm strong enough to go over it with you guys, because honestly, it can be quite emotionally disturbing to go over this. And I also have my journal entries for the year to share with everybody. And I know part of you out there are like, well, there need to be lawsuits filed. Well, it's not really that easy. You know, who's paying for these people's lawyers, and who's going to fight this fight too? You know, we're just getting out and we're trying to rebuild our lives, and it's really hard. And now we're trying to fight the system. Some of us are trying to fight the system on top of that. And I'm just really heartbroken over what's going on in America. But hopefully the right people will see this video, and hopefully people will be woken up. And if you're watching this, don't be afraid to contact your representative. It would be helpful. Contact them and let them know that we need this prison system fixed. We have more prisoners in America than anywhere else. Also, if you just want to throw some money at the situation, you can donate to places like Patriot Freedom Project, which is helping us rebuild our lives and just deal with some of the issues and things. So I guess that's it.